Hello and welcome to the great White North, your destination for the iciest cold takes from the frozen wastelands of the North. I'm your host, Charles Constantine, and with me is NP. Say hello, NP.
Yep.
How's it going this week?
Really good. Really good. I've just been busier than a Japanese beaver.
Are those things busy?
Oh, well, work started up going crazy again, like it does in spurts. And
Oh yeah,
girls and family and birthdays and traveling, which is
too
all
much
good.
to handle. But hey, it sounds like you're having fun.
Yes. A lot of people seem to not be. I've
Oh
noticed
really?
a lot of our guys seem to be in a real, especially our younger guys. There's not much future to look forward to these days. So I was
Yeah, it's
talking.
kind of like bleak.
I was talking to my cousin, and he'd been like down. He's just been like not talking much. He hasn't been getting his work. Actually, he owes us a theme song, but so I was asking him about that, and he explained to me like finally that he's like, I just don't really see a future. Like the business we're trying to do, where's that going? Like the economy's collapsing. All this. We're having some drinks, so he was perhaps a little more open than usual, but I was like, well, what the hell do we do about it? He's like, it's real cheesy, but I think maybe just live in the moment. I'm thinking, oh, so that is awful cheesy. That is awful cheesy. But it is like, if you go, for instance, if you're an alcoholic, some of you may well be, you go to Alcoholics Anonymous. They're going to tell you, take it one day at a time, right? And then I've had times in my life where maybe things are so rough, you got to take it 1 hour at a time or 1 minute. And I think there's a lot of truth in that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see a future? Like the economy is collapsing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess for me, I'm just the eternal optimist. Like, no matter what happens, like I don't like nuclear war. Okay, like we just got to take it as it is and make the best of it. Like at the end of the day, you can't be successful unless you reframe things in a positive light. Like for me, it's always, heads I win, tails you lose. Like flip any situation into your favor, even if it's difficult. And this comes with having the ability to be persistent, right? Just keep moving forward. Like you said, taking it 1 day or 1 hour at a time. But as long as you can, put that foot in front of the other foot, even if you're just dragging it along, I think you're gonna work it out. Or if you don't work it out, I mean, what's the worst? You die? Okay, well, I mean that sucks, but you can either keep moving or not, and so you might as well keep moving. That's my take, and I think when things are really uncertain, it's a fair point to say live in the moment. Live as it comes to you, because you can spend so much time thinking about how badly are things going to be in 5 years or 10 years, and that just ends up distracting you. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have a plan for the future. You should be prepared for the worst case Ontario, but you still gotta deal with things that you have right now, and they could be worse still, and there's still plenty of opportunity to make the most of the situation as it is now. And the more that you do that, I would say, at least the better you make your circumstance right now, the less you have to worry about things getting bad in the future. So again, goes back to live in that moment, make things as good as you can right now for yourself and for your family and for your community, and then there's a lot less to worry about. So that's what I see in that kind of manner.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And of course, a known cure for the anxiety about the future is listening to the Great White North and the soothing tones of Charles and the bowling alley he lives under.
There you go. You got some nice, comforting vibes that you can cozy up with right here. And if you're already here, you're taking a correct first step anyways. So you have nothing to worry about. We got your back.
So I saw you had some follow up to that shooting in Edmonton last week.
Yeah. Well, there's let's see. Let's take a look at that article real quick here. So they found some suspects, and can you guess who these suspects were? Can you guess?
Was it a white middle aged guy?
Oh, you're so close. But Mohammed, 22, and Said Ibrahim, 23, were already arrested for it. They're each facing first-degree murder and 6 counts of discharging a firearm with intent to endanger life. And they're also looking for another guy, 27-year-old Said Osman. So, it wasn't too clear, but based on this mugshot we have, it does not look like a white middle-aged guy at all. So,
Damn.
I guess you were right. You jumped the gun last episode, but that did not cause your prediction to fall off. So,
right.
There you go.
So we got some Somalian on Somalian violence.
Yes.
In Canada for some reason.
And clearly the most dangerous threat still is white nationalists. So I think AOC had some tweet the other day about how white nationalists are the biggest threat in America, and the similar sentiments here in Canada as well. We got to watch out for these white people committing hate crimes. And I don't know, like that shooting happened on 118th, and I'm telling people to avoid 118th. I think most people in this city tells other people to avoid 118th, but they're not telling people to avoid 118th because there's roving gangs of white nationalists walking around 118th.
It's the guys from the West Side Story snapping their fingers, leather jackets, dangerous fellas.
That's right. Yeah, no, it's no. The reason people tell you to avoid an area, to avoid a ghetto, is not because the threat of white nationalist gangs. It's they're telling you to avoid the area because of the kind of guys that committed this killing. So, yeah, like this kind of thing. Of course, if you've been in this for any amount of time, you've seen it time and time again. But once again, it proves the point, and everyone knows this, that the threat is not white people. That's you just telling people who saying that people who advocate for themselves are the biggest threat to everyone else, causing this false idea of terror from white people is just a libel against our race. And it's all, again, it's always shifting the blame off of everyone else onto the convenient target. And the people that have to take the brunt of the hit of that talking point is always, working class white guys, because the wealthier white people, they can always social climb their way out of it, or buy their way out of those accusations, but not the average working class family. So these are just another example of what is the actual threat. I'm not even going to say, it's all immigrants or the actual threat, but at the end of the day, when you're talking about what the deadly threat are, what are these deadly threats in society? You have politicians like AOC pointing at white people who advocate for themselves, but when we see it not actually manifesting, and it is in fact the polar opposite. So just another reality shock. Not even a shock at this point, unless you're new to this. But yeah, there you go. Another story to toss for your friends and family who might not quite get the situation they're in yet. How about we look at, you want to put the whole video on the screen here?
I'll do that. Okay. Sure. Okay, let's take a look at this.
They took a look at our documents and he says, we don't say no, but you should wait.
These are Russian dissidents who are also trying to protest or have opinions in opposition to the Putin dictatorship. They are facing persecution and torture if they are removed to Russia. They also are afraid to go back for the very related reasons, the very same reason Ukrainians are going in. But Ukrainians are making it in, and Russians are not, because the media situation is not the same for Russians.
My name is William. William? You like a whiskey? It's unfair because America always was open for refugees. It is a country of immigrants, and look around. We behave ourselves well. We don't run, don't cross the line. We just going in the law.
Yeah, so apparently Russian dissidents or people opposed to the Russian regime are getting blocked at the U.S. border, and they're preferentially letting in Ukrainians. And this, I think what we see in the video is this Russian guy, saying, "Hey, what's the deal? I thought they let in refugees. I thought, being someone that was under threat of political persecution made you valid." But we can see obviously that there's a double standard being applied to the Ukrainians and the Russians in this context. And more broadly speaking, we talk about the wider immigration crisis and a refugee crisis that the States faces with people from South America or from wherever, however they end up. People from the Congo somehow getting refugee status through all these kinds of NGOs. But in the case of Russian dissidents, who apparently, again, according to the mainstream discourse, they're the true freedom fighters against this evil Russian regime, they're not really being granted that same level of acceptance. And what it appears to me from what I see here is that it's only what matters insofar as what is agreeable with the narratives being pushed, right? And we understand, double standards is a big thing, but I just find this funny because in Canada at the same time, so what we have right now in Canada, and the sentiment is really the same, is that, okay, Russia bad, Ukraine good. People protesting against Putin are good. We need more people protesting against Putin because he's bad and totalitarian and he suppresses his people. But at the same time, we have people getting arrested, like in Calgary this past Saturday, 6 people arrested for protesting in Calgary. So our regime apparently does everything the evil Russians are accused of by the mainstream discourse. And even though we're being told that the main dissidents against the Russian system should be supported, they're actually not even being supported when it comes down to the refugee status. So this whole thing is just a complete mess and full of the double standards as we see. And to me, it blows my mind that we're able to uphold this image, this false reality so well. It just shows how important media control is. But yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on all of these entangled, just narratives and just mess?
Well, first off, it's impossible to untangle in any real meaningful way, and any attempt to do so will probably be overly reductionistic, or not, overly generalized. But you can, from their actions, like you say, see what they are trying to push and what they're not, and it is just another case of anarcho-tyranny, or whatever you want to call it. Double standards, not hypocrisy. It's pushing towards one common thread. And right now, that's Russophobia, or whatever, anti-Russian sentiment. Tomorrow, who knows? But certainly the anti-white thread will continue to be pushed. Mm-hmm. I think the best way to look at all this, is to try and do that. Just try and gather the larger pattern out of all these seemingly contradictory things and see what they're actually aiming at.
Yeah, I think that's really the most that you can do with that, because if you can point out these contradictions, you can help kind of lift the veil a little bit. And again, I don't think a mass red pilling of the normies is something that can be done, but these are little stories that you can use to kind of poke holes, because I got a lot of normies around me pushing this pro-Ukraine thing, and when they go into the whole, where are we need more people protesting against Putin, more Russians standing up against his evil actions? Why are these people supporting the war? And then you can pull out, okay, well, the Russian dissidents that are leaving and fleeing this, they're not even getting let into the countries as refugees. Why are Ukrainians giving preferential treatment in that regard? If you see both people, both the Ukrainians and the Russians that are dissidents, as being opposed against evil Russia totalitarianism, then why is one being treated preferentially?
I have a funny story about this, actually.
Yeah.
I was at a friend's house, and she had a Ukrainian flag on her balcony, right? So I'm like, okay, I start talking to her about it. I'm like, well, and what do you think of the Maidan then? What do you think of their treatment to the Donbass region? She's like, what? And I started explaining to her, oh, yeah, it is. And she's like, oh, careful not to talk about this stuff around my roommate. And I asked why. She's like, well, she's mulatto. I'm like, oh, I knew exactly what she meant, too. I was like, yeah, you're right. Anyway. Yeah. I think just ask liberals what they think of the Maidan. That's a fun way to throw it. Because it happened in 2013, 14. It's not ancient history. It's you have no clue what's going on out there.
Well, and again, it goes like you go back to the protesters in Calgary getting arrested, and you just say, well, if you hate Russia so much for dealing with their dissidents in this war situation, why is it okay for Canada to arrest these protesters? And I haven't tried it yet, but I can guarantee you, if you go and you try that on one of these people, they will not have any good answer, and they might just get mad at you. But I don't know. I find it's fun to stir the pot, so I don't see a big deal with that. The important thing is just poking little holes here and there, and you have plenty of examples now where, again, these narratives are just crisscrossing, contradicting each other back and forth. And at the very least, you can, in a sense, you can be anti-fragile against the people that are just the sheep for whatever narrative, the people that just agree and amplify whatever they see, support the current thing or whatever. It's incredibly easy to be just anti-fragile against that, because you can always pull up something that contradicts that without really having to go very deep into your actual beliefs, right? You can guard yourself against being outed as some, evil supremacist or whatever they want to call you, Nazi, just by saying what the narratives themselves say and contrasting against each other. And that's enough at this point. That's all you really have to do to rock the boat in their worldview. So at least have fun with that.
Yeah. Comment below with your results. Results may vary.
Yeah, go give it a shot and let us know how it goes. I would be very interested to see.
Well, we got a very special guest, one I'm extremely excited about this week. It's a guy I've been following since pretty much the very first day I started, and you all know him. He's a man of many, let's say, controversial opinions. He's always a delight to talk to. He's very polite to everyone who is polite to him on Twitter. And even most of his enemies, he's fairly chivalrous to, I've noticed. I think his bearing and conduct are exemplary in their own right, although his ideas are also extremely worth pursuing, and so we're going to ask him about those. It's none other than the legendary Matt Parrott. Matt, it's good to finally meet you here. I've been following you for a long time. We wanted to talk about
your on the show. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
We wanted to talk to you mostly about your Substack today.
Oh, okay. Well, excellent.
First,
happy to talk about almost everything.
I've noticed that on Twitter you cover just an astounding variety of topics, and managed to piss off quite a few people doing so too.
Yeah, I run my mouth until physically stopped, or the lawsuits start coming in, and I have to stop.
You had good luck on that last one, though, eh?
Oh yeah. That was a squeaker. went up against the most powerful leftist law firm in the country and made it out alive.
I saw the numbers on that, and I didn't instantly understand how it was a victory, but you assure everyone it was.
Well, we're currently working through the victory, but I'm waiting for that victory to be confirmed by more objective sources than ourselves. So yeah, I'm not in a big hurry to take the W, but I'm telling everybody there's a W there.
That's great. So the reason I was so eager to interview is because I really wanted to pick your brain about post-colonialism. When I was introduced to post-colonialism, it was in like a first-year university course, Guide to English Lit or whatever, and it was all the different critical approaches like structuralism and what have you. And one of them was post-colonialism. So I guess my first question is, how is your vision of post-colonialism different than that one?
Yes. When I say post-colonial, I'm trying to kind of retake that word. If we need a different word, but it's different from anti-colonialism, or what I call anti-white revanchism. You know, okay. And the problem is in postmodern academia, the jerks got there first and have taken ownership of a lot of terms and a lot of ideas and a lot of frameworks that don't really belong to them if you start, you know, actually systematically looking at it. And post-colonialism is about moving forward from the era we were just in, which is the colonial age. We have 1.5 feet still in the neo-colonial age we're in now, but we're moving to society globally and locally. Things are moving towards a post-colonial model, and it's my position that white identity belongs in the post-colonial argument, and we do ourselves a huge disservice by entangling our identity in the colonial phase, which is not only morally obsolete, it's logistically obsolete. It's not even wrong. It's kind of like if I were arguing for chattel slavery, like even if the other side were like, you know what, it's totally moral, go ahead and buy yourself some. I went to Africa and I bought myself some. I wouldn't be able to compete with the agribusiness, right? So it's not even wrong, right? You know, my slaves would not, you know, they'd get mad at me and wonder why, you know, this business isn't working, and it wouldn't work out well for anybody. And that's kind of my attitude about a lot of white identity. That it's, in my opinion, it's absurd the extent to which they try to frame whiteness as one and the same with the colonial era, which is absurd because our people and our traditions existed long before then.
So can you give an example of that? Like, is like saying all white people are Cortez pretty much, or like what's an example of how they use that against us like that?
Well, the idea, their idea of post-colonialism, which is incoherent in that it only is used as a tool of anti-whiteness. Okay, for example, they say the Canadian people, or white Canadian, or whatever term you want to use, real Canadians, colonially moved there, so therefore they have to move back. But if you look at the Native American migration patterns and stuff, those people also moved there. And I'm not talking about like prehistoric, you know, caveman times, thousands of years ago. These migrations were relatively recent, with different peoples competing for resources and land. And this idea that they just want to roll back any white claims to territory with just naked hypocrisy in terms of like, okay, well, if you guys are indigenous peoples, then wouldn't the Irish be indigenous peoples? But no, the Irish and the English, or, you know, any Europeans in Europe, are not indigenous peoples because they're white. Okay, And you can very easily trip them up on this if you, and this is what I'm saying, we can and should be making persuasive and compelling post-colonial arguments, buying their initial premise that the colonial era is over, and then winning those arguments rather than trying to defend outmoded models. And it's very important that I'm not saying we should throw our ancestors under the bus, and that's why it's post instead of anti. It's saying, okay, that's how things were. They're not going to be like that anymore. The world has changed, and the conditions, the environment, the circumstances no longer permit, Cortez or whatever, Prince Rupert, or however you want to frame. In terms of just saying that we're moving on from colonialism doesn't mean we have to turn against our own heritage or be ashamed of our history or anything like that at all. It's just saying, okay, that's what they did, but the world's different. It's time to move on to a future model that's ethically and geopolitically and logistically coherent.
Right. So, because it seems like a lot of people come into this sphere and then they see the arguments for being proud of your race or being proud of your accomplishments, but then they just go and agree and amplify the idea of being conquerors, and then just double down on that because it feels good to go from having no identity to having some strong identity. But what you're saying is that obviously isn't really a winning strategy with the way the world is going forward, and it kind of is silly to be trying to ape a conqueror from the position that you're in at the current state, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, might is right is a terrible framing when you're in the humiliating position that white identitarians are in globally, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
We need to have a compelling moral argument, and not just make the argument, but actually believe it and consistently operate within the framework of that moral argument, which is, that ethnic cleansing is wrong. We shouldn't do it. You shouldn't do it. And if they try to come back, well, your ancestors did it and they should be punished, then we need to be able to open that conversation and be like, well, what about the Bantu expansion? Well, what about all the invasions deep into Europe? The era where Europeans were winning is really impressive. Don't get me wrong, but history is much greater than that. With in terms of whites were routinely picked off and entered into the slave markets in Africa. It went the other way for a long time, routinely.
So any argument that would tend towards reterritorialization as to pick an arbitrary point, like how far back do we go? Do we get the Muslims came into India in 1100 or something? So should they all be gone, or
Yeah, should they all be gone? Should the Muslims get Spain back? Who knows with these people? It's a kind of it's anti-white revanchism that only works against white people, and you can pick apart their arguments very compellingly, and then move the conversation where it needs to move to. You have authentic communities that exist, that have been there for generations, that have roots. How do we respect those and move forward within that context? How do we, there are certainly indigenous peoples in Canada, and I assume you guys respect the right of those communities to exist and to have a great degree of autonomy.
It's a matter of much contention, really.
Well,
I mean, politically, from our point of view, it makes sense. They have their own little kind of ethno-states. It's kind of nice in a way. It should just be run better.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it's not run better, that's really their problem, right?
Well, The links federally to these communities are terrible. Like they pay off their bad leaders to make bad decisions, etc. A lot of bad influence coming from our federal government.
Well, and then those are the kind of entanglements that need to be discussed in terms of, okay, well, why aren't our authentic communities receiving these same protections? Why are traditional Canadian places and spaces being invaded and replaced and displaced? Reify their model and be like, maybe the rest of us should have that too. Would be my perspective, my point of reference on that. So,
what about places that are like quite blended, and we say reterritorialization of any kind is probably not a good option? How would we then end up being able to have our communities in separate, like our proper separate rulership without physically removing people?
Well, first of all, if the community is authentically blended, like say, New Orleans or just a place that's very, Miami, how would white people even take Miami back, right? Or I guess Toronto might be an example there in Canada. Or there on the West Coast, I guess the Chinese are pretty,
yeah,
they have quite a.
They're probably, whatever. Yes, I see what you're saying.
I wouldn't argue against those. I think it's important to kind of concede a lot of that. I think there's a lot of ground that should be conceded. Okay, and that's where I end up disagreeing with a lot of other white advocates who want to have an attitude of not 1 inch, not 1 inch to the opponent. I don't think that's constructive or realistic or helpful for our cause to have that kind of mindset. A lot of those blended places should just be welcome to be blended, and you would be looking more towards spaces that aren't blended yet to defend. And I've argued on Twitter. There's some who I have another Substack, the Neighborhood Freedom Act. I don't know if you've seen that, but okay, great. Well, for the audience, it's the Neighborhood Freedom Amendment, which the United States constitutional amendment, which would not be applicable to Canada, would be a constitutional amendment that just allows for discrimination within a new subdivision. Okay, and this would allow religious discrimination, civic discrimination, and racial and national origin discrimination, whatever you want. It would allow a new neighborhood to only allow its people in there.
So you're very like pro-ethnic enclave. That's
yes, very enclavist. And I understand that's not the entire solution, but that would be sufficient. Right now, the thing is, we do not have either on your side of the line or mine the basic conditions to ensure the future of our people. Okay, it is. I know it is in America. I don't know. I'm sure it's probably as bad in Canada. In America, it's illegal to take any step to protect the ethnic character of your community.
Yeah, same here.
Yep.
Okay, and that is ethnic cleansing, and you can explain how that process, which is an over kind of the civil rights era, has cancerously overreached its original goals to the point where white people in the United States or Canada aren't allowed to exist in the future as a matter of strict formal federal policy. Or you don't use the word federal, confederate, or
we still do. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
We're bizarro America. It's don't know quite what's swapped, but it's mostly the same.
Okay, well, don't hesitate to cut me off if I when I do make any mild errors like that, because it's important.
Sorry, Matt. Sorry. No, you're good. You're good so far.
Yeah, well, with all that, I think one of the predictions that you're talking about is government not really being the locus of authority, and you describe ethnarchy being the locus of authority. And so any policy that would prevent you from attaining, the locus of authority for your own ethnic community, like you're saying, is very dangerous for that group. So it seems to be that seems to be the obstacle to overcome, to deal with the shift away from government being that flag to capture.
Yeah. Well, I think in a lot of ways, the federal government will become less relevant in the coming years in terms of their ability to control things at the local level. You're going to have more of the anarcho-tyranny that St. Francis spoke of in terms of the government will become more fanatically anti-white, but there will be more opportunities than there are now for intelligent, savvy, and agile white enclaves to instantiate and preserve themselves. And I think we need to be prepared to seize the opportunities that are going to come, and what I think will be kind of a soft failed state situation, not all that different from how some parts of Mexico are right now. I think that's coming to Canada and North America, or Canada and the United States.
Charles?
Yeah, well, I guess on that, what exactly would you say are the steps to take to prepare for that in a context, like at least where we're at right now?
In terms of what can be done, first of all, ideology matters and theory matters, and you need to have what I believe to be that correct theory, and not be trying to LARP 20th century or even 19th century political modes, which I see a lot of the movement is in many ways lost in that. We have to be forward looking and thinking really, how do we preserve our faith, family, and folk against these forces that present themselves? Okay. You got to keep your eyes on the prize like that. But at the same time, you can't lead with theory. I think one of the mistakes that Tradworker made was it led too much with theory. Going in, we did a lot of food drives. We did a lot of really, in my opinion, impressive stuff at the local levels with qualifying ourselves with the community. But we were doctrinaire in the wrong context as far as being too theoretical and not looking at this in political enough terms. And there's I would recommend anybody who's wanting to become politically active to read Plunkett of Tammany Hall. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
No, I have not.
Okay, well, it's just a really funny, short little, greasy little guide explaining how so much of like local politics is really about kind of like what he calls honest graft and relationships and social networking and developing trust and rapport in the community. And I believe,
Sorry, Charles lives under a train station.
Okay. But I think a huge thing, we need to think globally, but we need to act very locally. And that's our greatest strength is the farthest from the center. And we need to keep that in mind. There are things we can do as far as spreading the message and stuff on social media and engaging national and global conversations. But at the end of the day, we need to have mutual aid networks that actually infiltrate local politics, run for city council, run for school board, and have people who are public facing as far as you can go in the public sphere with messaging confluent with our messaging.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe the post-colonial messaging is far more, far less likely to get you deplatformed, and there are ways to effectively make that messaging without getting canceled, as opposed to making LARPy pro-colonial imperialist messaging or whatever.
And without so many of the concessions as someone just going conservative or something like that.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is people think in terms of blending in with conservatives. I guess the last couple of months has really reminded me that in a lot of ways the conservatives are still more people than the liberals are, but we have to understand that the conservatives are incorrect about things, many things, but at the grassroots local level, they're still more our guys, you know?
Yes.
And I think some people, I've been railing against contards and all this Trump buffoonery for quite a while now. But those Trump buffoons are our buffoons. And we kind of have to keep that in mind, that we not get too amused. And I'm the last one who should be saying this, given my Twitter track record. But the last one is to go too far in dunking on the contards. Okay, we need to disagree with them and convince them that what they're trying to do, which is in a lot of ways what we're trying to do, they just don't understand it yet, and they don't know, they don't have the language to explain. And so much of white identity politics is sublimated into all these really cringe, silly things that don't actually advance white identity. And we can dunk on those to some degree, but at the end of the day, it's our fault and problem that we haven't figured out how to explain to these people compellingly that this is about your race. This is about your identity. They're trying to take away your heritage. Your heritage has a right, you have a right to preserve your heritage. You shouldn't be ashamed of it. And they've intimidated you into hiding behind all of these secondary and tertiary matters, when what you're really trying to defend is your people and your way of life from hostile outsiders. And you should, to win, you've got to actually figure out who the enemy is and figure out what you're fighting for, or you'll continue getting led into these traps, like J6 or the trucker, the trucker
yes.
convoy.
The trucker one more ambiguously, but yes.
Yeah, more ambiguously, and I feel like there was actually some an argument could be made that there was some degree of success there in terms of demonstrating a power and resilience there.
I heard a weird rumor about it, actually, as a point of follow-up, that a lot of the original funding and leadership came from a conservative faction that was trying to replace O'Toole. I wonder if there's truth to that. Could be.
Oh, I don't know.
Well, but so let's turn away from this for a minute. You're a man of many predictions, and I want to know how Dark MAGA is going to end.
I don't think Trump's actually going to run. I don't think. I think Dark MAGA was kind of fun. It's just sort of like making fun of MAGA. There's some fun memes with Dark MAGA, but at the end of the day, MAGA is a spent vehicle. It goes in the wastebasket with the Birch Society and the Tea Party and the things that came before that in terms of Newt Gingrich's revolution. And it's time to move on and figure out what's next. So we need to spend more time trying to formulate the next thing rather than trying to revive Trump, because Trumpism it's discredited as a vehicle. Okay, there are things to learn from Trump. Trump was an interesting historic character. I don't wish to totally dismiss and discard everything about Trump. There are a lot of impressive things. You know, everything's about and relative to him to some degree. Even still, it's been years since he's been in office, but he had that kind of impact. And I'm not saying that that's not the case, but how old is Trump? And does Trump have the coalition that got him into office in 2016? No, he doesn't even have anywhere near the coalition that he lost in 2020 with. The fallout from J6, his increasing age, his being kicked off social media, and his weak responses to that. He hasn't managed. The problem with Trump is he's not a leader. He's a branding guy, and all he's good for is branding. And that's, we saw how powerful that is, but at the same time, we saw its limitations, right? Mm-hmm. And we saw that he didn't achieve anything. He would do these awesome things, like everybody remembers the tweet he did about the South African farmers.
Yeah, that was really great.
How awesome. Oh, that was awesome. Made my day. I was whistling and, just had a wonderful rest of my day from that, but nothing ever came from it, right? If you look at, he never built a team. He never built a faction. He never set about any goals. And when it came down to it, he freed Rubashkin, right?
Yes. That was the first thing he did, wasn't it?
Just
like maybe
about,
the very first time.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to Dark Yang Gang, actually. That'll be funny.
Dark Yang Gang. I hadn't thought about it. Yeah, that could get scary. Yeah, hopefully with like the Chinese taking over, that could be fun.
There's some potential there. I invented it, if anyone wants to know.
Okay.
Negative UBI.
Charles, you got some more questions?
Well, just to touch on the Trump thing and those kinds of, I guess, meme movements, I think it seems like people get wrapped up in them quite easily because it's fun to go along for the ride. But I think, I don't know if you agree with this, Matt, or not, but I think we should be looking for ways to be holding the reins of these sorts of things in the future. And I don't think it's necessarily going to come that easy, but it'd probably be better to stop sitting around for the fun rides and look for ways to hold the reins in the future.
You mean in terms of designing and defining new political movements?
I guess so. Yeah.
Existing ones. Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. I think we sort of had this crazy carnival ride from about 2015 through about 2017 or 18, wherever you want to, however you want to define the alt-right and its whatever it was. I really think, and I've been saying this for a while, we need to dust ourselves off and start from square one with our own vehicle. We keep trying to subvert other vehicles, and it just doesn't. It's just not going to work. Those vehicles don't have our interest in mind. And you see Mike Pompeo on Twitter, every week on the week, every time he gets a paycheck, he goes on Twitter and is like, I love Israel so much. Israel is the best ally. That's all he does. You can just go on his Twitter. It's just, oh my God, I was just, mowing my lawn. I had to stop and love Israel. And that's MAGA, right? And you see that with, they don't share our priorities, our goals. They will. I mean, the thing is white identity is this, powerful vril in American politics that you can harness to get ahead, but nobody, it's kind of an illegal performance enhancing drug, right? You got to use just enough white identity to win the election, but not get caught by the anti-doping doctors, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you see, like Marjorie Taylor Greene and stuff doing is they'll pander and play with it just enough to kind of activate the almonds and get people excited. But you got to understand that they're not white advocates. They're just using our thing to get ahead, and that's actually worse than an enemy, right? That's and we have to keep that in mind and learn to denounce and discredit those kinds of people instead of platforming them and being like, oh, look, they're using my talking points to pursue an agenda that's hostile to mine. Isn't that cool that they're using my talking points? You know?
Yeah.
They're drinking my milkshake. Isn't it delicious? That was basically the alt-right in a nutshell, right? Is look at Trump. He's drinking our milkshake, and he's winning the elections and kicking ass with our secret recipe.
And sending
no,
the proceeds
I agree with.
Yeah.
Yes, but yeah, I agree with what BNP said about we need our own vehicles, even if they're modest vehicles. We're better off, building our own soapbox derby car in our garage than we are trying to hijack their Black Hawk helicopters or whatever analogy you want to use, and we'll actually get farther and we'll actually get where we want to go. And the way politics are moving, I think people see that as like hopeless. But if you agree with me, which I'm not asking you to, I'm not implying you do, if you agree with me about devolutionary technology and how it is undermining the centralized command and control structures of this country with the credibility crisis of our media and institutions, having a soapbox car is actually what you want to have anyway, okay? Being agile and being grassroots is going to be more the future than 20th century mass society politics that we're fixated on trying to win.
I do agree with that.
And I think that's kind of what you're describing in your vapor trad model, this framework that you've put forth. So I guess my question on that is, what's the best way for people to prepare for that shift? Because you talk about the shift from the mercantile age to the manual age. So I guess utilizing devolutionary technology is one of those ways, but where should people be looking right now to prepare for that shift?
Like I said earlier, the organic mutual aid networks. In TradWorker, we had what we called Walnut. It was a parody of Obama's Acorn thing. White Advocacy, Leadership, Networking, and Unity Teams, right? I'm really proud of that acronym. But anyway, the acronym succeeded. Everything else fell apart. The idea, and with our foundries, where we had people apprenticing under other people, and what was funny about the foundries we did was there were more business owners messaging us about, hey, I would love to mentor and really help put together a workshop of young pro-white men who I'm financially supporting and I'm teaching a valuable trade. Then I had young men interested in doing that, which is kind of the challenge we have right now as far as getting people to move and do anything. And I don't wish to nag, because I obviously haven't sold them on the necessity of this, right? They don't get how being in a mutual aid network like that will be so critical and valuable for thriving and succeeding in the future and having the kind of footing you need to scale up politically.
I think so many young people just don't see a future, are so overcome by everyone can see the decay and all that it's very hard to motivate them.
Oh, it is. And I don't wish to just bash on the Zoomers or whatever, but we do need to we need to figure out how to sell them on the idea of winning, right? Of getting out of that basement. And there's nothing wrong with being in your mom's basement as long as you have a goal and you're working towards that goal. But getting out there and finding a girlfriend, finding a wife, finding a strong career that's resilient against these devolutionary forces we're talking about, which I would consider like the trades are a good example. The kind of things where the best way to put it is if there's not an HR person involved, okay? And we need to, especially given where the economy is going, where those bullshit HR jobs are increasingly going to more aggressively discriminate against white males, right?
Yes.
And this idea we need to be infiltrating the institutions it is, I think, really bad advice for young men. They need to have the resources to where even in a hostile system that's more explicitly opposed to them than it is now, you know, that implicit versus explicit knob just keeps getting cranked up higher and higher in terms of where, like, you know, a decade ago, the HR rep would have been like, okay, well, these guys are both equally qualified, but this guy's black, so we'll take him. That'll look good. Whereas now it's like, well, this black guy's not barely even qualified. This white guy's far better, but we absolutely must hire this black guy or we'll face lawsuits. It's going to look bad for our diversity quotas and everything. And the direction it's going in more of like a, I can't believe you even applied. You're clearly a white male. What are you doing? Get your ass out of here. Which is the direction it's going in.
Yeah, we're not far off from that.
No, we're not. And there are places in this economy that, and this really isn't that much different than what Irish travelers or Jews or Indian hotel owners and that sort of market dominant minority mindset where you find niches in the economy where you can thrive despite not really being an insider, right? And there are those. If you become, you know, if you know plumbing or being an electrician or being a computer programmer, and there's a wide range of things you can do that don't have the HR representative. They don't all have to be like gritty, masonry or welding style jobs.
Drafting's pretty good if you want to sit at a desk all day.
Yeah.
Here's my concern with that, Matt. We're starting to see in Canada, we have like a burgeoning caste system coming in. We have the Filipinos running the Tim Hortons and for sex work, and we have the, you know, Indian and Chinese managerial class, and whites are being relegated to tech labor, which isn't the worst caste, but do you think there's a chance it might, you know, stick us in there and we'll be stuck there?
Honestly, if it's a profitable caste and you're able to use that money to support your white family in a white community, I don't think that would be entirely a sour deal, right? But I think the problem is they're trying to push us out of any dignified role in the market altogether, which in a lot of ways, a lot of young white men are still in this mindset that they're going to be part of the administrative apparatus of the system, okay? And they're still getting educated for that. They still think in terms of that status, right? In terms of like, well, I've got a white collar, you know, professional job, therefore I've succeeded. And they still have a mindset for a system that's no longer, you know, it's not only not working for them, it's working against them. They're no longer welcome in it, but they're still.
Yeah. So you're talking from a purely realist perspective for how things are. You're not saying that the ideal situation is white tech workers working for Chinese managers. You're saying that's just how it is right now, so we should use that.
Well, it is how it is. Obviously, that wouldn't be the perfect ideal, but frankly, especially with home sourcing, if you're living in a small town there on Lake Huron, on the other side of it, of course, with a white family and white neighbors, and your kids are going to a white school and going to, you know, doing what white Canadian kids do, and you happen to have a Chinese boss, ideally in China, as your boss, that's great. That's actually like really, you know, white identity succeeding in the new global economy, right? And he doesn't care about your politics. He doesn't care who your neighbor is. He doesn't care to forcibly integrate you.
As long as you get the work in on time, you get paid, and that's good. Yeah, you know, you're not wrong.
Right. I think that's far more realistic, and that's I'm excited about this home sourcing thing. It's going to happen anyway. I'm not so much excited about it as saying this is going to be the future, because there's going to be a lot of pain with it too, because in a lot of ways, whites are going to need to compete with a lot of the third world in terms of outsourcing. Yeah, if they can just hire anybody on the computer, you're up against several million Indians and Chinese people, which I've been in IT long enough to realize that's not the game over scenario people imagine. We're bright people. We can thrive at that and earn more money per hour because we're more productive per hour than those offshore firms who often produce inconsistent, crappy work. Not to mention, of course, you know, we all are born knowing English as a first language, which is, you know, take advantage of the advantage.
Good points. So if you were a new guy who you maybe read something about the JQ or something, you just found us today, what would your first steps be? What do you think the most important thing you could do would be?
Well, I guess it depends on. I have more questions about what kind of guy I am, because I think it's important. Not everybody can or should be what I call face fag, or whatever term you want to use, a name fag. Not everybody should be in a leadership position. We do need those people too. You got to kind of figure out what are your goals in life and how to integrate your political ideals into that larger picture. And I say that because there are so many, and I'm so tired of hearing from them. I just wish they would shut the F up. People who decided to be publicly pro-white, and then they spend the rest of their lives in the ghetto of pro-whiteness, which is, you know, anathema in the society. Anathema, it's the worst thing you could possibly do. And you know, there are dozens of, you know, convicted child molesters in my Tri-County area, but I'm actually more repugnant and repellent because I went on record as saying I believe white people have the right to exist. Okay, there was a local sign campaign where people put up little signs saying everyone's welcome here, because there was fear that because I was here, and there are more signs in the yard against. Those signs are still up and about. Okay, and those people strongly regret. So I guess what I'm saying, without pointing my finger at anybody in particular, don't come here if you're not ready for the consequences. I love it. I don't care. My authenticity is more important to me than my conventional success. I have kind of a scrappy work style and, you know, a way of going about my life where I don't care about all this stigma and, you know, even enjoy it to some extent. But please consider it carefully before you decide to run out and be explicitly pro-white. Okay, and do know that the technology you're using, okay, if you're just half-ass 1 foot in, 1 foot out pro-white, but if you're, you know, pro-white on Twitter, know that things could get worse in 5 or 10 years, right? And that's the way things retroactively can become illegal is something a young person should think about. And, you know, a lot of this stuff, you get caught up in how history's changing, and that happened to me in Charlottesville, right? We were convinced, you know, we told ourselves, look, we have a permit, we have the ACLU, we have every right to come here and speak our mind. This is, you know, free speech 101. That we have every right to do this and are fully protected. Even if the Antifa come and attack us, we had the permit, so we're going to get the benefit of the doubt in the court. Okay, the entire national conversation moved out from under us. Okay,
And then you're yelling, "Mom
And-
said I could. Mom said I could," and Dad's chasing you with the belt.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I call it having America brain, and I still suffer from America brain, where in terms of thinking I have First Amendment and Second Amendment, these Bill of Rights, which I used to make fun of Canadians, being like, you guys don't have these Bill of Rights, but there's no difference now. Okay, everything that was cool about America versus Canada is gone, completely wiped out. We don't have freedom of speech anymore. The Second Amendment has been entirely carved out to the point where it's legal to own a gun if the government likes you or doesn't care. As soon as the government doesn't like you, they've got 1,000,001 reasons and ways to red flag you and track you down and get your guns away from you and get you in jail because you own guns. They're illegal politically. If you're just an anonymous yahoo using them to collect or go hunting with, then they're not going to bother you. But that's how it is everywhere else too. The idea that's the First Amendment was cool because it made a statement about how this country actually belongs to the people, and that's been outmoded just over the last few years. Same with free speech.
There's a big difference between like what it says on the paper and the people that are applying it. And I think the sooner you can help people realize that, the better. Because we're even seeing that in I think people were protesting in Calgary yesterday, and I think 6 people got arrested for protesting there, despite having all the permits, and they're just getting a hard wake-up call right there.
Yeah, and it comes at you fast, and it's been unsettling for me. There's these people who are always like, "Well, you didn't pay attention in civics class." I'm kind of like in the opposite position where I like paid too much attention in civics class. So it's like, oh wow, this we live in a land where you have the political right to say whatever you want, even if the government doesn't like it, because the government is bound by this powerful First Amendment that's absolutely etched in stone in our Constitution. And I tried to cash that check, and you guys see how far that went.
Yes. Matt, I don't want to keep you too long. I know you're a busy guy, and you have a new member to your family. Is that right?
I think he has 2 new members.
Yeah, I can't really go into that too much, but yes, there's a massive, incredible growth in the number of Parrott family members currently underway, and it's an overwhelming blessing time for me right now. So yeah, I've got my hands full, but it's been an honor. I do want to ask you guys. I'm going to turn the tables and interview you guys for a second. Okay.
All right.
I was reading a little bit, and one idea, I can't find the original essay I found it on. I've just found bits and pieces confirming kind of the points the essay made. But the premise being that one of the big reasons, I want you guys' opinion on this. I'm not giving you guys this. I'm asking if this makes sense to you. One of the big reasons why Canada didn't join the American Revolution was because the Quebec Gazette was a government-run newspaper and was not like all along the 13 colonies, was very much, you had all these little independent newspapers. And those independent newspapers were churning out the revolutionary propaganda, whereas the King's Printers, as they were called, the Quebec Gazette especially, which was the kind of the only newspaper in Canada at the time, didn't have any time for that bullshit. And it was actually that explains why the revolutionary fever never crossed into Canada.
I believe it. I hadn't heard that. I think there were.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think there are more reasons it didn't happen. I think there was a real loyalist faction, as I understand it, but that does explain part of it for sure.
Yeah, like I haven't seen those specific details, but I do have some excerpts that I've read a while back from a Canadian history book, and on the topic of the Canadian question, what is Canadian identity? And this is from the late 1800s, but this French Canadian nationalist was lamenting their failure to get involved in the American Revolution and to separate themselves from Canada, get Quebec out of Canada and a part of America through the Revolution. Those French Canadian nationalists really thought they got a raw deal sticking with Canada and would have preferred to have been a part of America, at least in their time in the late 1800s. So I don't know how much the newspaper played a role, but there's definitely something preventing that from manifesting, because there was some impulse towards being a part of America. At least the French thought there would be value in that.
Yeah, I like the idea, because with my vapor trad model, I see the American Revolution kind of as an example of the mercantile elites becoming so wealthy that they can overwhelm the previous order of sovereignty, right? Which the king, they're able to just through media and through finance, we're able to create a kind of pirate state, turning a for-profit corporation of America against the king. And the free press, which of course was a very big deal among the founders. And I think there might have been more to that, love of a free press than meets the eye there, in terms of how the media, this country could arguably be manufactured by the media from the beginning, in a way. Just something I
That's extremely interesting. I'm gonna have to look into that more myself.
Okay,
and if you need any French translations on that, we can help you out too, if you find anything interesting.
Okay, appreciate it.
Charles, the bowling alley's acting up bad there. Like, you got nothing but background noise.
Well, I don't know. It's my fridge this time. I don't know what to tell you.
Are all the do all your electronics run on like tubes still, and the transformers are just humming? Like, do you live in a steampunk factory? What's wrong with you?
This place is kind of old, but it's not that old.
I could hear them just fine. There was some charming background effects that added ambiance to the conversation.
Some ASMR.
In future episodes,
like they're at home.
Yes. I'll just edit Charles out as usual.
All right. Well, thanks. Thank you guys for having me on. If you have any follow-up questions.
Well,
the Global Minority Initiative, gminority.org. Please take some time to find a pro-white political prisoner in there, and send them some commissary money. Send them a letter of support. If you don't have to dig very far to find people who are truly political prisoners in there. If you want to skip over some of the ones let your own ethics guide you. They're all in there for you to select who you want to support a la carte, and we don't make that decision for you. You make that decision who you want to support. But it's very important, whichever ones you support, that you support our men behind the wire, whose freedom has been taken from them for being an advocate. It's important that we stand for them. It's one of the most important things we do as a movement. So that's gminority.org. Your support is certainly appreciated.
Awesome. We'll toss that in the description. Sounds like a real solid cause. So yeah, go ahead, get on that.
All right. Thanks for coming by, Matt. It was a pleasure. And maybe we'll have you back on someday.
Love to be.
Because there's infinite things we can talk to you about.
Anytime.
All right.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Matt.
Appreciate
it. All right. Well, we're going to actually take a look at Matt Parrott's blog, his Substack here, and just touch on some of the ideas he is exploring in this blog, and kind of expand a bit so we get an idea of what angle he's working towards. So we're going to deal with his introduction to his ideas today, and this is his post called "A Dynastic Approach," and he comes forward with the mantra or the phrase "faith, family, and folk," and obviously these three things are very important, and the goal is to use to have a healthy future for your people based within those three pillars. And those three things, I think the current regime, the capitalist system, works very hard to undermine those three things. And so if you can put forward a strong defense of faith, family, and folk, then you can be a bulwark against the regime and an empire and a system that hates you. So what he kind of touches on here right off the bat is that we need to be stewards for our family, for our people. We need to take the role of the father and the uncle and the grandfather, and basically build a framework that allows us to offer a future for our descendants. And this is the idea of a dynastic approach. And he points out that you don't have to be a billionaire to do this, right? Anyone can do this. This is the role of the father, that paternal element that we should all be taking up and trying to secure a position and a future for our children, right? So we need to be thinking really long term, and we need to have a proper framework for establishing ourselves long term. And I think that's something that a lot of people within our sphere misses. I think a lot of people just kind of come in and say, "Okay, I'm just pro-white," or 1930s National Socialism is cool, so that's what we are, and they don't really give it much more thought than that. And what Matt points out here is that it is more than all that, and in the changing paradigm of things, if we don't have a framework, we don't have a roadmap going forward, then we're not going to be very successful at making sure that we have a long-lasting people. So yeah, that's basically the overview of everything. Did you want to jump in anything on that from you, NP?
No, not particularly to that, but to the article itself. He has almost a solar punk vision of the future with nature and people and technology all working in harmony. And I think it is a lovely vision, and it is just that, a vision. You can't criticize it on the basis of its practicality, because a lot of the technology there wouldn't even exist yet. It's kind of anticipating future developments. I think as far as visions go, is one of the brighter ones you'll ever see. Most visions of the future now are extremely dystopic. This kind of flips it on its head, and I think that's important. We want an optimistic view of the future. We got to create the conditions where that optimism is well-founded.
Yeah, I think that's really important in all this. Because there's no point in despairing about collapse and things falling apart, because then you just embrace for that, and you don't really have any sort of idea of what to build.
Even the best survivalists, their best outcome is that they get to survive like underground in a bunker or something like that, like some terrible life.
So how can you? I guess in one of the practical elements of this is, how can you really build any sort of movement or community or get people active and engaged if you just have a despairing notion of the future? If you give people a reason to follow you, a reason that the future will be bright, if they just take some steps alongside you because you do have faith that things will get better. If you have that bright future, you can get people to act. But if you don't, if you just accept decline and accelerationism, then you really don't have any negotiating power to make people believe in what your cause is. So I think that's important, because he gives us a little bit of a model. He has this model, he calls it the vapor trad metapolitical model, and it's a way that he uses to explain civilization and how it progresses through the different ages. And so for him, it's this organic shift from one civilization to the next, one standard, right? So you have martial elites organize early on, using their military force to conquer and be in control, but then they have to build a class of people to support them, right? Logistics, all these things, so that they can have a stronger war effort. But then they lack the managerial capacity to continue their mode of conquering, of maintaining their status. So that martial elite gets undermined, and then the next group overcomes them, right? So you have the martial getting overcome by the managerial elite, who are more effective at establishing rule through that new technology that was once there to support the war effort. Now it's running the way authority is imposed. So this continues through each model. And for Matt, what we're living in is the mercantile age, right? They use the economic technology to overcome the managerial elite, and the next stage is the manual stage.
That's
so
very surprising, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it makes sense. Every dog must have his day.
Right, and like his point in all this is that the technology, and he points out the devolutionary technology of the one age undermines the previous age, or undermine whatever technology that comes about from the advancements of that current age leaves it to be undermined by the subsequent age, right? So basically what he's getting at here is, for the mercantile elite to be overcome, the people that will be the manual elite, the working class proletariat type. And this is not a purely Marxist understanding of this, right? But it requires you to seize and harness the stage of technology, this devolutionary technology that will undermine the old elite. And so what he says is basically, he uses this analogy of the surfer, is that you do have some agency. Even though this process is organic, these shifts from civilization to civilization, you still have agency within this process. So you want to be the surfer that has the capacity, the skill and the will to ride the wave. Even though you don't control the wave itself, even if you don't have, you can't change direction of the winds, you can still ride it if you're skilled enough. So as the mercantile age is drawing to a close, you have to have the skill to make sure that you don't get crashed against the rocks at the end of the day. And this is going back into his dynastic approach. If you have a long-term vision of the future for your people, for your children, then you've got to make sure that right now you're developing the skills to ride that wave, which includes understanding the technology that will allow you to have success in the coming manual age. And it seems like blockchain is one of these types of technologies that we can take advantage of to secure power within what he describes as ethnarchy. I think we touched on this on the interview, but power being within intentional neo-tribal communities. And if you want to control your capacity to organize within those communities, you better have some of this technology and some understanding of this technology. So that's where that's that model, this metapolitical model that he's giving us in all this. And I think this is really important if people want to be successful in the long term.
So what are some of those technologies that we need to seize on? There's blockchain and Bitcoin and that sort of thing. Well, not Bitcoin itself, but that sort of technology.
Well, I think the main one that gets pointed at is the blockchain itself, and he does have an article describing the power of that. The privacy that comes with it, and these sorts of things.
What else? What else do you think?
Well, I don't really know from Matt's perspective what else is in the mix there.
Because it ties very nicely to our discussion of Joel's article, where we said one institution will replace another, but they don't have. It doesn't have to be the same institution, then controlled by us. It's usually something different.
Right.
Academia replacing the church. So blockchain is replacing banking as we know it.
Yep.
And that will go into contracts too, and then thus labor, and it'll have wide-ranging implications.
Yes. You could even say that the types of institutions and the way they organize is a form of technology, right? In the same way, when the managerial overcame the marshal and used their control of logistics, for example, logistics itself is a technology. So there might be potential in the way that you organize. That might be considered a type of technology. These local, smaller level forms of organization are a technological advancement over the mass society government organization. You might be able to make that argument.
I wonder what that would mean for farming, because well, I can perfectly picture our current model of farming being mercantile. We even have the term cash crop.
Right. Yep.
And the focus on everything is to grow 10 gajillion tons of corn.
Yes. Yeah.
So
corn and like canola fields, and canola fields just for canola oil, because it's mass produced for the purpose of frying things in restaurants.
Well, and coming soon, as I understand it, biofuel canola will be a big source for.
There you go too.
So we're just literally burning it. I guess this is just literal efficient. Like, I'm not gonna be able to explain that well here, and it's not completely bad, but it's certainly a very mercantile thing. Yeah. I would think something with the hobby farm, or like the small.
Well, yeah,
must be a good
this is something Matt said in the interview of, you don't need to overtake it. You don't need to claim the Apache helicopters for yourself, or Tomahawk, or whatever. You might just need to build a derby car, and your derby car will get you to point A, from point A to point B, and those helicopters, they might not be that useful anyways. So that's I guess one example.
A big canola field is only good if you have a buyer for it.
Yeah.
So that has to be a factory. It has to be someone who needs 1,000 or 7,000 tons a week of your product.
Right.
Whereas if you can sell a cabbage for $1, you can make at the farmer's market, you can make a hell of a living off that too. And you only need an acre for that.
That's right. So I guess reshifting, recentering your mindset into that frame of things. If you understand this, if we assume that Matt's correct in his medical political model here, you want to be looking for those avenues of organization or shifting in technology and ways to live out your life.
Let's do one more example. Let's do politics itself then.
Sure.
Because the way to political success right now is to go through the main parties and get donations from the mercantile elite.
Yep.
Maybe the more blockchain version of politics will be, I don't know, it'll be much more distributed. That much is certain, right? So your local enclave's representative will actually matter again. It'll be more, whether it's democratic truly or not, it'll be more of what the vision of democracy offered, of more regional control.
Right, that shift back to the local capacity and local organization.
Some people have called that like neo-feudalism, maybe, or no, that might be different, but maybe they're both borrowing from the same kind of vision.
Yeah, something along those lines. I'm not exactly clear. I think going back to the term Matt was using, ethnarchy, that'd likely be the way to go. In turn, you have your ethnic enclave. The authority and the power lies within the power of your enclave, the people you've organized with. Maybe you live around them, maybe you don't, and then you draw your decision making, your politics from within that sphere, and that will manifest probably in some ways that we've seen before in that smaller scale representative democracy, or however it manifests, and probably also some way in something new, something that's on the horizon that we haven't arrived at yet.
You should just go read the article and make up your own mind, and leave us some suggestions in the comments of ways you think that might go.
Yeah.
And, better yet, write some good articles about him and see if Joel will publish them for you in Firstness, because I think it's a good avenue. It's a very creative avenue. It sparks a lot of possibility, and the more creative minds we have on it, the more we're going to be able to ride that wave.
It would be very good to see some people taking some of this stuff and then building off of it, with whatever they come up with. I'd be very impressed to see what people have floating around in their brains when they mix these ideas with their creativity. All right, well, I think that's all we got for today. We followed up on that shooting in Edmonton, and touch a little bit on the Ukraine and Russia stuff, and the narratives and the hypocrisies and all that garbage. But the big thing, having Matt Parrott on, it was awesome having him on.
I've always wanted to talk to him.
It was a great discussion. The guy knows his stuff. He's quite intelligent, wide range of topics that he's well read on. Plus, guy just can do anything. I'm very
super nice guy too. Easy to approach. You do anything fun this week? Do some boxing?
Yeah. I had a little bit of a fun little sparring session. Gave me something different. Like the way they had it set up at this gym I went to is you did 3 3-minute rounds. Everybody took a turn doing 3-3-minute rounds. And all the guys in the gym, you had to spar all of them every round. One at a time, like not at the same time. So you would be like 30 seconds for one guy, then the next guy, and you just have to cycle through all 8 guys in the 3-minute round, and then you rest for 30 seconds and you go back in, all 8 guys 3 minutes, and then you do that for every single guy in the gym. So burnt me out like crazy. It was real tough, but
wow,
definitely recommend it.
You'd have to adapt your style so quickly, and
yeah,
that'd be great training.
How about you? You get up to anything fun?
Yeah, lots. I went to an Oilers game yesterday. That was fun.
Oh, yeah.
They won. I don't usually watch hockey. I couldn't usually give less of a shit, but I was invited, and it's really fun to sit down at an actual live game. There's good fight, really good fight. Someone should write a book on like hockey fighting tactics and techniques, because it is a martial art of its own, fighting on skates.
I guarantee you that's out there somewhere.
But I'd say these guys were true masters at it. Ref got hit by a puck. That was good. I mean, bad for him, but it was exciting.
But no, it's fun. It's that's what you're there for. You want to watch something cool happen. I mean, those tickets are what, like $300 or something?
I didn't pay for them.
Well, there you go.
That's the only time I go to maybe.
Game. Yeah.
Actually, we were kind of. I don't want to say we were in the nosebleeds. Like you could see good and everything. It was way high up, and I could see it was all like it was a bunch of jaded old fans who knew everything about all the players, and they're yelling. They're critiquing the players. It was really funny.
Man, I love that stuff. You always got some expert.
The peanut gallery is the best place to be. Yeah.
Usually a guy that played hockey for like 3 years when he was 8 years old. That was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Has no clue now. It's been a while since I've been in an Oilers game, but my last time I was there, it was like all white people. It was surprising. Usually you walk around the average city and it's quite a mix. It looks like quite a mix, but the Oilers game,
97%, I would say.
Yeah. Was that what it was like for you?
Yeah. There's a few others mixed in, but probably 20% at least better than the actual demographic of the city.
Well, it is white pilling to see that. I remember lots of young white families. So it's not all, again, people that are all doom and gloom. It's not really all hopeless, right? It's out there. There's still people having families, still people being successful. So yeah, don't get too down on yourself. Things aren't always that bad.
Well, I'll see you next week, Charles.
Yeah, I'll see you next week.
Bye.
See ya.